Hello, welcome to another episode of What Are You Selling with me, David Green. And joining me today, I am delighted to welcome Adam G. Fleming, the author of the Steampunk Chronicles, which is a steampunk dystopian epic of 5 books that has just recently been completed. Adam, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, David. I'm doing great. Very enthusiastic right now about writing.
Yes, that's the best way, because you don't want to be, because there's this whole kind of like romantic thing about tortured artists where it's like we're all miserable. We just want to have a good time most of the time, and when we're writing, we want to kind of do something that we enjoy writing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just trying to have fun, and I am one of those that they call a pantser. I just write by the seat of my pants, and so, the toughest thing is getting to the end of a 5-book series and going, wow, I started all these interesting storylines. Now I got to wrap them up, and I didn't have a plan for how I was going to do that. So the editing process of the last book was like, that's work, but it's fun because you get to sort of, tie things off in ways that you never could have imagined that it would reach there.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Maybe I'm a step ahead of you on one of your questions. I don't know.
No. Oh, yeah, maybe we'll see. So, I mean, the thing is, you say things, and then it brings new questions to my mind. So you did that. And I was gonna ask you, with 5 books, so you say you're a pantser. Were you having to before you start work on the next book in the series, did you have to go back and read the last one that you did, or could you just remember every single detail? And did you, when you got to the 5th one, go back a little bit and go, oh my God, I've not done anything with this storyline that I've set up. I best do something about it.
That's a 2-part question. First of all, the first part of the question was, do I read back through stuff? A little bit, but each story kind of is its own monster anyway, and so it was like, oh, I guess if I forget little details, I really don't care. So there's Easter eggs. Let's call it Easter eggs. So if you can find something, let me know. I'll be like, thank you. I don't care.
But that series is over now, so it's fine.
The second part of the question was about tying up the loose ends. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question again?
Yeah. So basically, was there anything that when you got to the 5th book, was there anything that you were kind of like, you know what, I've not actually picked up that thread yet, and I really need to kind of wrap that up at the moment? Or was it just kind of like, as you said, well, we'll just leave it dangling?
Well, if I left something dangling, it was on purpose.
Right.
I sound really flippant here about like whether I care if everything ties up, but I do, because well, frankly, I felt like the 4th book, like I was getting to a new level of skill and ability, and like I just think the 4th book is brilliant, and then you're like, well, oh crap, like I got to top that with the last one in the series. And then I realized I gave myself a pass. I was like, I don't have to top it. I just need to end this in a satisfying way, a way that satisfies me, a way that satisfies the readers. And it doesn't have to be, I think you put a lot of pressure on yourself if you think every next book has to be the most brilliant book that you ever wrote,
Yeah, because
so I did care, and I did look back and say, okay, when I say storylines, it's almost like which characters are main enough characters throughout the series that they need to have their story tied up.
Right. Yeah. Because that's right. Because I mean, what you were saying just before as well about having to kind of top yourself each time that you bring out a book. You go back, you look at the most successful authors of all time, the ones that like, Stephen King, or if you're looking at like fantasy, Robert Jordan, who has a long series. Not every single book got better. Some of them were substantially worse than the ones that came before, for whatever reason. What it is just you're wanting to give a satisfying story in its own right, and people are always going to prefer something to something else. You can't. If everyone started trying to write to people's subjective tastes, then did
Sure.
accomplish nothing.
Right. And I think the other thing is that my story has magic, it has some miracles, it has some alchemy where they're, it's steampunk. So they're making, these sort of modified people with guns on their, on their arms or whatever, that are sort of like mechanical / human automaton type things. But I'm not like a world builder who wants to know all the details about how stuff works. I just want to tell you it works. Don't worry about it. Like, just enjoy the story. So, but when it comes to like magic and miracles, I really prefer ambiguity. Like, you get to decide. I mean, it's almost like I'm writing about belief, about faith. Like, you get to decide if you believe this was really a miracle or coincidence or what, that's up to you as the reader. So tying some of that stuff and explaining everything is not what I'm about.
Oh yeah, sure. So how did you get into steampunk?
Well, great question. So I have this other, I create worlds inside of worlds.
Okay.
So like 5 or 6 years ago, I was working on a project that I still haven't released. It's got 200,000 words, which for people who don't write, that's like 4 books, 3 or 4 books worth of stuff in the manuscript. None of it's published. It's about a kid who gets lost at a Led Zeppelin concert in 1977. And he's a member of a religious sect that follows the prophet Hosea, who, if people don't know the Bible, he married a prostitute. So you got a Christian sect where people are marrying prostitutes. That's already weird enough. His mother loses him at a Led Zeppelin concert in 1977. He grows up to become a rock drummer. So it's alt history, literary stuff. It's not really genre fiction. Well, I wanted for there to be some kind of book that these young guys in the 1990s in this rock band start arguing about, like, what does it mean and this kind of thing, and even write concept albums about it. So I started writing a steampunk book back in, I don't know, 2014, and that just ballooned into like a 5-book series. And so that's how I got into writing steampunk. It's all a backdrop for another series.
That is Stephen King level of books within books within books. That's very impressive. Also, as well, I don't know if you can see this, but talking of Led Zeppelin.
So you're a Zeppelin fan. Nice.
Yeah.
I've listened to a lot of Zeppelin over the last 5 or 6 years as I'm working on that project,
So why Zeppelin? Why was it because they were the biggest band in the world at that time, or was there another reason for it?
Yeah. Well, and actually that kind of plays into start doing a steampunk thing because there's dirigibles. And so that kind of plays into the Zeppelin theme. And,
sure.
And the character's name is Ezekiel, because he's from a religious background, and so I just thought Zeppelin Zeke sounded catchy.
Yeah.
And so he meets John Bonham as a 3-year-old and like plays the drums, and John Bonham's like giving his mother money. He's like, get this kid a kit, he's got to play, and so it all kind of started with the what if a kid got lost at a Led Zeppelin concert and became a drummer. And then I was like, well, who in their right mind would take a 3-year-old kid to a Led Zeppelin concert? And then I had to build an entire sect where this woman has no clue like what's going on in the outside the walls of her little commune or whatever. And so I mean, it just like stuff just keeps ballooning on itself, and then I find that I've written a 5. I love the steampunk visuals though. Like I follow steampunk hashtags on Instagram and stuff like that, just because I think it looks cool. Obviously, I don't dress that way, but
no, I agree. I mean, it's a thing that I've always admired, like a genre I've always admired. I like reading it as well, and it's something that's it's niche enough but people know about it. But I also wish that it was bigger. But there was more things. There was more. I mean, there's occasionally that you'll see a film that's got like a steampunk aesthetic. There was that film that's based on those books about the city that can walk, and what was called Mortal Engines or something.
I read the first book of that, and I was like, that's a great one for like, how does this work? Don't worry, just trust me, it works.
Yeah.
I'm not that much into like the science behind it, but I was like, This
Yeah.
doesn't sound plausible. I didn't watch the movie, but
No,
I
I
heard
don't
it
think anyone watched.
bombed.
I don't think anyone
Yeah,
watched the movie.
kind of bombed. The
Yeah.
book was interesting. I mean, it's an interesting premise, and I think I just think steampunk is interesting because it kind of limits your palette of what you can do. Like you can't have cars, you can't have airplanes and stuff.
Yeah.
But then if you add in magic, like anything's possible again.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
sure.
So
Yeah, because it's something that I think the first time I kind of really came across it as a kid was I had a Dreamcast, and there was a game on it called Skies of Arcadia, which is like pirate steampunk.
mhm.
And I was like, this is
Yeah,
amazing. I was like, why is there not more of this? And
yeah.
then I realized that there was more of this, and it's a big society that just is there that people kind of. But no, I do enjoy it quite a lot. So you got the 5 books.
People who like pirates in steampunk, I called them dirates because it's pirates in a dirigible, so I use the D instead of a P. So
Right.
they're dirates, and they fly around and raid people and stuff.
As pirates.
Sorry, I had to insert that. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. So the 5 books are out. So why don't we go back to the start of this? Obviously, we've gone back to the very, very start where it kind of bloomed from Led Zeppelin concert. And by the way, I would definitely have taken my 3-year-old to a Led Zeppelin concert if we'd had.
You would have.
Oh yeah, he's 4 now, and I think he would have loved it because he listens to Led Zeppelin with me. But let's go back to the start of the series. So, I mean, the latest book that has just come out is The Prophets of Doom and the Leaping Hedgehog, which is book 5.
Correct.
So let's
Yes.
go back to book 1, Satchel Pong and the Great Migration. So that's obviously where the series gets its name. You've got a copy.
Yep, there it is. Yep.
Brilliant. Yep.
Yep.
So just tell us about it. Tell us about the series from the 5 books. No spoilers, obviously, but what that you would like our listeners and watchers to know about it.
So I'm not like a Green Earth campaigner or anything, but I just thought it was an interesting trope that a world would be getting hotter. So Satchel Pong is a meteorologist, and in this world, it's kind of like a government official position.
Right.
And his job is to track the weather and give annual reports on what's happening. And he's kind of a coward at the beginning. Of course, you got to have some character transformation. So hopefully he's not a coward by the end, but he sort of neglects his duty for about 10 years because he sees the trend that the world's getting hotter. Okay. As you get deeper into the series, and again, I don't want to spoil anything, but everything exists in the southern hemisphere of this globe. So there's a star that's either approaching or heating up somehow, kind of like our Polaris, straight to the north. It's either approaching somehow. Again, I'm not explaining the science because my wife kept asking me, like, how's this working astrologically? I'm like, I don't know, just suck it up, But so the globe is getting warmer because either the star is getting hotter or closer or both. And Satchel Pong's starting to think that maybe they're going to have to relocate, perhaps even off world. So, but the first challenge in the first book, The Great Migration, is to get the people on his island kind of, they're not really part of the broader societies, or they're sort of insular, I guess I would say, on their islands, small island nation, think Hawaii or something like that, where he thinks that it's time for them to migrate en masse to somewhere else on the globe. Okay. And as the series continues, then, there's the question of, is it possible to create some kind of machine so we can go off world to another world? I don't want to give too much of that away, but so he begins the migration in book 1, and then I'm just like constantly adding characters and adding nations and cultures and intrigue.
What was the as before you said you're a pantser. I like to think of myself as a planter. So I have like, say I have a garden, and then there's a path. Well, say I'm stood at one side and there's a gate on the other side, right? I know the side of the garden and I know the things that are in the garden, but my path might go all the way around and come back again, and maybe even double back a little bit. But I'll eventually go past the things in the garden and get to the end. So like I'm a planter, I suppose.
Mhm.
What book did you find out of this series did you find the hardest to write, and which was the easiest?
The hardest was the fifth one for sure, for
Yeah.
reasons we've already discussed, just tying everything up. And I like your garden path kind of analogy, because I've often explained it as you've got to understand what the next beat is to
Mhm.
move the story forward. And oftentimes I explain that as like, you're in a coffee shop, there's an explosion outside the window somewhere down the street. Your character has to go out the door towards the explosion
Right.
most of the time, unless you're writing the book of Jonah, right, where he goes the opposite direction, but they
Yeah.
have to go somewhere. And anything that they do in the coffee shop between the time the explosion happens and they go out the door is fair game. They could grab money from the till. They could, recruit a sidekick. It doesn't matter. And then you got to get out the door. Bunny trail off of your question. The fifth one was the hardest. Probably the first one was the easiest because I wasn't taking it seriously. I was just writing backstory for another novel. So I wasn't even thinking I was going to publish it. I put it away for like 2 years and came back to it, I think in 2018, and read through it. And it was 85% done. And I was like, this is pretty good. I think I'm going to finish it and put it out.
I like
So,
this. This is good. I like it.
yeah, I think yeah. And it helps sometimes to have that. Again, we can put so much pressure on ourselves to get projects out and stuff, but it doesn't hurt to put things on the shelf for 2 years.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you still like it when you come back, then you know you've got something.
Yeah, exactly. There's always going to be readers, right? That's the
And they'll all have other people's stuff to read on their shelf as well. So
yeah. As long as they're buying it, it doesn't really matter.
yeah, who cares if they read it, right? No, but you got to get the reviews too. That's the tough part.
Yeah, that's it. So what's next for you in 2022? Because obviously you're writing all the time. You want to be you're a full-time writer now. You have 12 books, I think it is on the about altogether.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well, because I just decided to go more into like full-time writing work just about 2 months ago. And as I shared with you before we started recording, that I immediately got a ghostwriting project. So I'm going to keep doing that. I went on the Camino de Santiago in November, walking from Portugal to Santiago in Spain, 2 weeks of hiking. And I have a book in the work called Old Roads, New Friends, which is kind of like a nonfiction essay on what I learned on that journey. And I'm always traveling, so I'll be looking for other ways to travel this year. And still working on the Zeppelin Zeke project. That might take a couple more years, but I did make a deal with somebody to edit the first third of it. So maybe I'll put out the first book this year. I might wait until the whole thing is done to feel that the entire story arc is actually complete on this one, which is not what I did with Satchel Pong. It kind of, if you start putting books out, you're kind of stuck with what you, I mean, you can go back and change stuff, but it's just a lot of work. So a book of essays, a book of alt history fiction, ghostwriting, and I also have a series that I've co-written with a guy named Justin Fike called the Stetson Jeff Adventures. Jeff Stetson is kind of a cross between a Chuck Norris type and a Forrest Gump type. And so he's adventuring around the globe. You know, he's a Texan looking for a good piece of steak and justice, you know. And it's a throwback to a lot of the 80s movies like Karate Kid, if you're into Cobra Kai and you remember Karate Kid, or Bloodsport, or, you know, some of those kickboxing type movies. But he's a little bit of an idiot savant. So he picks up languages easily, but he's also kind of a dope a lot of times. And it's just funny stuff. And I think 2 of those books, 4 and 5, are drafted. I want to get 4, 5, and 6 out this year, and get all the audiobooks out too.
And Justin obviously did the Far Shore Chronicles series as well, which
right. You know Justin, have you interviewed him?
I've read the first 3 Far Shore books.
Great. Yeah,
Um,
that's who I'm talking about.
yeah, I kind of move in the same circles.
Right.
I chatted to him on Facebook groups a couple of times, but
Mhm.
not interviewed him yet. But maybe one day we'll do, because
Yeah.
it's excellent.
Yeah. So yeah, I had fun writing those with Justin. It's a departure from him, but I think my stuff's always about humor and travel. So
Right.
I try to have fun and I try to travel. And I
Yeah.
try to do the same thing in my books.
Okay, well, that's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. And I'll have to come back on again at another point. We can kind of update us on everything that's gone on since you've been on last time. Everyone who's watching on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Music, all of Adam's links for his social media and all where you can get his books will be in the show notes below. So please do check those out and click through to them. And thank you for staying with us until the end. Adam, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks so much, David, for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
No worries. And everyone at home, until next time.